Take a close look at this table. It's the official podium list for the FIFA World Cup Golden Ball over the last 20 years, given out to the tournament's best 3 players. Notice anything strange? Well, if you go back as far as Germany in 2006, an incredibly bizarre pattern emerges. Zidane, Schneider, Pirlo, Robben, Modric, Messi. Out of the 15 total podium spots in the last 20 years, a staggering 11 have been claimed not by clinical goal scorers, but by deep-lying architects, dazzling wingers, and traditional playmakers. But why is that? We're always told that football is a simple game, right? Goals win matches and strikers take the glory. They command the highest transfer fees, weekly wages, and have swallowed over 60% of the fan-voted Man of the Match award since 2002. Yet, the history of the modern World Cup completely rejects them. You have to go all the way back to Italia '90 to find the last time a tournament's top goal scorer was also officially crowned as best player, and even more damning is the fact that across the last 10 editions of the World Cup, Ronaldo in 2002 with Brazil is the only Golden Boot winner to actually lift the trophy. Well, to understand the reasons that the biggest tournament on earth consistently rejects elite goal scorers and crowns the creative architects instead, we have to look at how international football completely flips the script on everything.
This is it! That's the goal!
First off, let's look at the mechanical genius of modern club football. In the domestic game, top-tier strikers like Erling Haaland, 𝗕𝗫𝗧𝗏𝗏 or Harry Kane feast on goals because they operate within hyper-systematic, perfectly automated club environments. At a club like Man City, Barca or Bayern, players spend 10 months a year, 5 or 6 days a week, executing thousands of hours of rigorous tactical patterns. Every single decoy run is perfectly timed, every overlapping sequence is drilled to the millimetre, and the supply chain feeding the central striker is pretty much automated. This modern club forward does not necessarily need to create their own space. The club's tactical system is designed to do that for them, because at the end of the day, you want your best shooter shooting from as close as possible. All standard stuff. But what happens when you strip that entire multi-million-dollar machine away? International football happens, and it possesses absolutely none of this domestic luxury. National team managers do not get 10 months of meticulous tactical preparation. They get a handful of sporadic international breaks and a brief training camp before a tournament begins. And because of this massive preparation deficit, international managers simply do not have the time required to build these fluid 15-pass attacking combinations. When a collective attacking system cannot be automated and the individual quality isn't there to win matches in the blink of an eye, some lesser international teams naturally fall back on the easiest defensive structures to coach. Highly compact, stubborn, low-risk defensive setups. This creates an immediate structural crisis for the traditional forward. Against an organised, low block, an elite striker transforms into a complete tactical passenger if the midfield supply chain behind them is static and uncreative. And it's because of this apparent difficulty that we see the importance of another position on the pitch: the individual creator. A genius playmaker doesn't need a pre-existing, highly drilled club system to operate effectively, because they possess the individual intelligence to manually override the system itself. Players like Luka Modric, Andrea Pirlo, Wesley Sneijder were obviously elite players at world-class clubs, but international football forced them to lift teammates that sometimes weren't as good or were just drilled differently at club level. They couldn't rely on patterns. Instead, they relied on a rare, unteachable capability to read a chaotic pitch, manipulate an entire defensive block with a single drop of the shoulder, and execute an almost impossible pass. For example, France in 2006 were by no means bad, but Zidane's quarter-final display versus Brazil is arguably the greatest individual performance of all time, anywhere. But all of this can happen in any game throughout the season. A team's attacking blueprint breaks down and the individual creator takes complete control of the match. So why are we seeing it more prominently at the World Cup? Well, that's down to one pretty prominent fact in particular. And that, of course, is the unique psychological and mathematical nature of knockout football. In a standard 38-game domestic league season, high-pressing, high-scoring attacking teams will almost always win championships because statistical variance completely evens out over a 10-month period. They say that defense wins championships, but let's not forget that attack is the best form of defense, especially with a well-coordinated high press. Along with this though, strikers have a massive runway of games to accumulate immense confidence and form. form, which sees goal tallies rise, especially when padding their statistics against lower tier opposition. It's why strikers win golden boots, of course, because even if a midfielder has a purple patch, scores like 4 goals in 5 games, they're not going to be able to keep up and score 25 or 26 in 38. It's a whole other level of consistency. But the World Cup knockout stage is a completely different competitive ecosystem, defined by elimination anxiety, razor-thin margins, and immense psychological fatigue. Firstly, in the group stage, the mathematical cost of conceding a goal is catastrophic, and this summer will no doubt showcase that with so many third place places up for grabs. Look at Euro 2016 for example. Northern Ireland went through as a best third place team ahead of Turkey and Albania, despite all 3 of them winning 1 and losing 2, because Northern Ireland had a better goal difference. In fact, Portugal drew all 3 group games, went through in 3rd place, and then won the whole tournament. As a direct result, national team managers are often a little more cautious. Not full 𝗘𝗫𝗧𝗥𝗧𝗏 cautious, but a little bit more. Teams don't really play to win matches in an open, entertaining fashion. They play specifically not to lose them. Then comes the early knockout rounds, where elite giants are paralysed by the fear of an embarrassing early exit, and underdog nations set up again, deeply entrenched, to explicitly choke the life out of the game and gamble on a penalty shootout. I mean, look at the data. Since 2006, an incredible 12 round of 16 matches have been dragged into extra time and penalties, compared to just 2 in the semi-finals, where you'll probably find better teams. This environment is absolute poison for a traditional forward, because whether it's the space behind the defensive line vanishing entirely, or the prospect of facing 3 centre-backs and a tight-knit back 5, an elite striker is rendered completely anonymous because they're starved of service. Look at Harry Kane at the last World Cup. In domestic club football, he routinely averages around 4 shots per 90 minutes, but in the cagey, anxious environment of the World Cup knockouts, that number was cut in half, plummeting to just 2 shots per 90. This then is where the creator becomes even more valuable, because they are the ones who have the supreme technical composure to execute a single low percentage defence splitting pass or cross when everything else seems to have failed. Think of Andrea Pirlo in the 119th minute against Germany in 2006, casually holding the ball on the edge of the box to manipulate the entire German defence before sliding a blind no-look pass through to Fabio Grosso. The match report from this has the Italian centre-forward Luca Toni rated 5 out of 10 with, and I quote, "little to feed off in the way of chances and did not find space despite some sharp runs." So up step Pirlo. Then think of Wesley Sneijder single-handedly dismantling the tournament favourites Brazil in the 2010 quarter-finals when Robin van Persie, a prime Van Persie by the way, drew yet another blank. He ended up with only 1 goal that tournament, while Sneijder was joint top scorer with 5 and voted the 2nd best player. And lastly, because we were never not going to mention him, Lionel Messi in 2022, playing a mathematically impossible reverse disguise pass through Nathan Ake's legs to unlock a 5-man Dutch wall in the quarter-finals. That pass, by the way, had an expected assist rate of 0.06, which means it leads to a goal 6 times out of every 100. And that wasn't even for a striker, by the way. That was a marauding right-back in 𝗷𝗫𝗓𝗓. These single moments of creative genius are what break deadlocks, win matches, and etch themselves permanently into the minds of those voting on the golden ball. However, we will address the elephants in the room, and that is the exceptions to the rule. Video aside for a second though, here's a hypothetical question for you. Imagine you're on your holidays during the World Cup, or travelling somewhere for work, and you can't get your World Cup fix. You've got your TV licence sorted to watch the BBC coverage in the UK, but not abroad, so what do? Well, our office friends at Tom's Guide have the answer, because they've tested a wide range of VPNs, and NordVPN stands out as a strong option. Fast, reliable, and it comes with a 60-day money-back guarantee, enough to cover the entire World Cup tournament, so you can try it risk-free. And the best bit, for all FourFourTwo viewers, there is also an exclusive offer available. All you have to do is click the link in the description to learn more. Now, to truly validate the thesis that international football favours the playmaker over the executioner, we must rigorously examine those rare exceptions. Because if strikers are structurally disadvantaged by the international game, how did 3 players manage to shatter the trend and claim their podium spots? The first being Diego Forlan during the 2010 tournament in South Africa, where he didn't win the golden ball by lurking on the shoulder of the last defender, waiting for tap-ins at the end of a highly structured move. No. Uruguay were operating in a highly rigid defensive system. Haaland was forced to drop deep into the midfield, essentially roaming to pick up the ball. He spearheaded Uruguay's progressive transitions in the half spaces, dictated play, and fired spectacular long-range strikes from deep positions. Did he have some help with that wacky Jabulani ball? Sure. But if you don't buy a ticket, you do not win the raffle. Similarly, 𝗕𝗫𝗍𝗧's class for Spain in 2010 was achieved because he completely sacrificed his preferred striking role and spent the majority of the tournament deployed out on the left flank, acting as a wide playmaker who could interact with the intricate passing carousels of Xavi and Iniesta. It may seem like an odd tactical decision now, but given his quality in Spanish football's development at the time, with Pep's Barca, who in fact signed Villa days before the tournament started, having a more fluid attacking system wasn't actually that unusual. And it worked. Finally, look closely at Kylian Mbappe's iconic performance in the World Cup in Qatar. Whilst his historic hat-trick in the final secured him the Golden Boot with 8 goals, and making him a pretty tough player to ignore for best player, his overall case was defined by an immense creative burden. According to FBref, Mbappe logged a staggering 1,213 yards of progressive carrying distance during the tournament. To put that into perspective, that is more driving distance than Lionel Messi and nearly triple the carrying distance of a traditional striker like Kane, who managed just 375 yards. Even crazier still, whilst France's number 9, 𝗕𝗫𝗍𝗧𝗏 managed just one single carry into the penalty box all tournament, Mbappe registered a high of 25, double the amount of Messi and Vinicius Jr. He wasn't playing like a striker, he was single-handedly dragging his nation through the lines. He just also happened to find the net 8 times too. The historical data sends a completely clear message to any forward arriving at the international tournaments. If you aren't getting the service to score, you need to be doing something else as well. I mean, look at Antoine Griezmann. Not exactly an out-and-out striker, so I didn't include him in that bracket before. But in 2018, despite Harry Kane winning the Golden Boot and Kylian Mbappe taking the world by storm, it was Antoine Griezmann who took home the tournament's bronze ball and had a blinding tournament by completely sacrificing his striking instincts, dropping into midfield to manage France's tempo, dictating their set pieces, and acting as the structural glue of the eventual world champions. All of this historical reality then brings us directly to the doorstep of the 2026 World Cup, and a bold prediction of who I think will be next. With all the big named centre forwards, one in particular will demand a lot of attention in North America because he fits the bill of everything I've just said before. The joint highest value player in the world according to Transfermarkt, the best paid player in the Premier League, and making his first ever World Cup appearance. It's Erling Haaland. His goal-scoring form in European qualification famously dragged Norway back onto the grandest international stage for the first time in 28 years, and with an absurd goal-to-game ratio for both club and country, he arrives at the tournament as the most feared finisher on the planet. However, in the group and knockout stages, every opposing manager facing Norway will deploy a hyper-dense physical low block designed specifically to deny Haaland the green grass he likes to sprint into. And in those highly restricted spaces, Haaland may find himself completely neutralised and isolated from the game unless someone can manually unlock the opposition's vault. That responsibility falls entirely on his national team captain, Martin Odegaard. He is the singular player in the Norwegian setup who possesses the press resistance, the vision, the spatial intelligence to control the tempo of the game, drawing opposition centre-backs out of the defensive line and sliding the precise vertical passes into the box that Haaland requires. And all the data from qualifying backs this up. Odegaard heads into the tournament having completely run the show in European qualification, leading all players across the continent with 25 key passes and 12 total through balls. His joint high 7 assists were lethal, and 4 of those were direct assists served up on a plate for, you guessed it, Erling Haaland. Therefore, do not be surprised, under any circumstances, to see a completely dual reality play out, where Haaland could easily win the Golden Boot as the tournament's top scorer, while Martin Odegaard walks away with the Golden Ball as the official best player of the World Cup. Haaland can score the goals, but if he finds it tough to, it is Odegaard who will dictate whether Norway actually win football matches. When you sit down to watch the opening fixtures of this World Cup, ignore the frantic movement inside the 6-yard box. Turn your eyes to the space directly behind the opposition's defensive midfield line. That is where the hidden architect operates. And despite the goal scorers often grabbing the headlines and the glory, right there is exactly where the 2026 World Cup will actually be won.